my question is, what was what was that? Can you share with me what was that like growing up, like being around that type of environment? What role did this is more a curiosity on my end, but it's like just to know your background. It's just like what does somebody take to be able to operate at that high level? Like, so what was it like? What role did your dad have in your life? I'm curious, and then also
My
your mom
dad
later.
was our hero. I'd say my brothers would say that as well. Yeah. So I'm 6'8", and then my youngest brother's 6'7", my middle brother's 6'6", and my dad was 6'5". So we used to joke that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, not a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on, in the front of the church. But our 5'8" mother was the boss. It didn't matter how big, tall, strong we were. Whatever mom said, that's the way it went. Now, dad certainly set the tone for sports, but my mom and dad used to do what I call divide and conquer parenting, where, I'd have a game at 5 o'clock on Thursday night at this location, and my brother would have a practice at 5 o'clock on Thursday night at another location. So dad's going with me, mom's going with my brother. It was just constantly back and forth. And we loved that. I mean, it was just my parents were always there if they could to support us. I remember when my dad was dying of cancer, my youngest brother was in high school. And I was in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department, but I was living at home helping my mom. And I told my dad, I said, hey, I'm not going to my brother's basketball game tonight. My dad was like, yes, you are. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm a man. I have my own job. I'm graduated from college. What do you mean? No, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to go work out. I haven't worked out in a few days. He said, no, you're going to your brother's game. Your brother knows that I'm dying. He needs you there. He needs your support. You're going to the game. And my dad was right. I was just being a jerk. I was just saying, look at me. I'm important. I'm going to do my own thing. I ended up going to my brother's game because it was the right thing to do. But even as an adult, sometimes I think your parents need to kind of say, hey, Tara, you're kind of on the wrong path. This is where you need to go.
And that's amazing that that they had that type of influence. And then they worked. It sounds like they worked together as a team, where they're united. And I love that because that speaks volumes in terms of the person that you are today. Just speaking with you, it's almost like you give off a vibe, you give off a certain energy where it's just like you're solid, and it's like you have good values. And I'm even looking at your website right now and reading the things that in terms of the different values that you have. It's like, it sounds like that was instilled at a young age, or did that come somewhere along your journey as well?
I mean, it certainly was. I mean, faith was a big part of our life growing up, still very important to me, my faith in God. My parents did shape our values. I'll give you an interesting story. After I left Wendy's, but before I went to work for the hospital that cared for my father, I interviewed, and I got fairly far along in the interview process for a packaged goods company. And I remember I was meeting with the senior vice president of marketing, and we spent an hour and a half talking about basically my life from the time I was born until I graduated from college. And after the interview, he was like, okay, great, thanks. I appreciate you coming in. And I stopped him. I'm like, hang on a second. We spent 90 minutes and you didn't ask me one question about marketing, about packaged goods, about my relationship with the other members of the team. You just asked me about my life growing up. I said, do you mind if I ask you why? And he said, sure. He said, I got plenty of people around me that will tell me whether you're a good fit for the job. Incidentally, I was not offered the job. But he said, I want to hire people of good character. And I believe character is developed in the first 20 years of your life, which is why I asked you about your relationship with your parents and in high school and college and overcoming knee surgery and all this kind of stuff. I'm looking for people with good character. And the other thing he said to me that I thought was interesting is he said, character is caught. It's not taught. So you're not going to read a book and say, okay, I'm a person of great character. You're going to watch how people handle situations. And it can be like, hey, I really like the way she took care of that. Or I think he could have handled that a little bit better. And those things over life are going to develop your character, are going to develop the things that are important to you. And that's how I end up being the person that I am.
Fantastic. And so for our listeners listening in, when you say, okay, it's how people handle the situations and you developed and you were that person, that's how you were. It's just how you handle the situations. And you say that that stuff isn't taught. Like what made, for our listeners listening in, to be able to operate at that level that you're operating right now, what is like maybe like one or two things that you can share with them that can help them to be able to do that?
I'd say number one, you got to love the grind. You got to love what you're doing in life. I mean, so many people are just kind of muddling through their lives. They never have thought about what it means to be great at anything. And I love the Ed Mylett, who's an entrepreneur out in your neck of the woods, talks about the four types of people in the world. And when I first heard this, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I need to think about this. I need to spend some time seeing if this is true. But he talks about these four types. And in the first group he talks about are the unmotivated. And he said that's the vast majority of people that you will encounter in your life. And then the second group he talks about are the motivated, where it's a carrot and stick type of approach to life. If I do this, I will get that. It's kind of low level, but it works for a lot of people to have a very good, successful life. The third group he talks about are the inspirational people. The word inspiration coming from two words, in spirit. So if you're an inspirational person, you move people with your energy. And then the last group he talks about are the aspirational people. People aspire to be like you. And sometimes if I'm doing a presentation with a group, I'll tell that story and then it'll be like, all right, show of hands, how many people are unmotivated? Nobody raises their hand. Nobody ever thinks they're unmotivated in their life. But when I thought about that, a lot of people are. A lot of people are just muddling through. They've never figured out what their purpose is. So I think you've got to find that purpose in life. And then you've got to love the grind. You've got to love the dig in. You got to love the work. And if you can do that, I think it's something that you develop that fulfillment. You develop that calm. You develop that peace in your life that I'm working my butt off, but I love doing what I'm doing.
I love that. And so for the people who, and I'm sure most people won't admit or say that they're unmotivated, but and maybe some of them might not even be aware that they're unmotivated. And that's what that's in past podcasts, I've talked about this in terms of these are blind spots and they're not always visible to ourselves, but other people who have been through that, who have been through it and been there, done that, they can see that type of stuff. And so for somebody who might be going through life and maybe they're not really sure about what that purpose is, or maybe they kind of feel like they're kind of moving around a little bit, whether they're in the unmotivated or they're motivated with the carrot and stick. Like what is, like for somebody in that stage, somebody in that stage, what is it that they can, is there anything that they can do at that point in time to be able to like flip that switch on?
I think so. And I think if you remember nothing else other than what I say right now, I think this is an incredibly important point. It's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people in your life that care about you, that are willing to invest in you, that want to see you be successful in your life. Hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together. I mean, and I think you would agree with this. I mean, you've been an entrepreneur, you've done all kinds of things in your life. Nobody does success in a vacuum. It's not like I did all this stuff and I don't owe anybody anything. I owe a lot of people for my success, for where I am in life. We talked about my parents, my brothers, and things like that. I owe a lot of those people. But you've got to surround yourself with good people. And if you do that, you will pick up the good habits that those people have, and you will be good. But the opposite of that is true. I mean, if you're hanging around people that it's all about drama, it's all about them, they don't care about other people, then that's the kind of person you'll end up being.